All right. This is the time of the year where we bear down for your fantasy football research, which is why we welcome back the creator of the Fantasy Football Black Book, Joe Pisapia. Welcome back into the studio, man.
Thanks for having me. Look, a year later, here we are, right?
Here we are. Great advice last year, so we're going to try to turn the crank up a little bit and get even more out of that deep well of knowledge between your ears, if that's all right.
Sure, absolutely. Let's do it.
I'd like to start kind of big picture because I feel like every year drafting has a different strategy. Last year, a lot of wide receivers went early. The zero running back theory clearly didn't work, but everybody was on board. What is the overall strategy that a GM needs to have for this year's draft?
Well, I think the most important thing is you're tailoring the strategy basically to the league you're playing in, and that's something that's Fantasy Black Book 101. If you're playing in a Superflex league, you have to hit the quarterbacks early. If you're playing in a standard league, it's the running backs. And even in the PPR, I would say the running backs too. Last year, you know, when we talked, I was not very into the zero running back theory. I thought it was a bad idea. They should be more valuable when there's less of them, not less valuable. And certainly enough, it seemed like that's what you needed. And I would say this year it's the same. You want to leave that first 3 rounds with 2 running backs, I think that's the way to go.
Well, you're right here. I mean, we actually have the numbers to back it up. Last year, you predicted the zero running back theory was not going to be working, and the position with the steepest drop-off after the top 10 is running back. In 2016, the difference between the #1 wide receiver and the #12 wide receiver was 50 points for the entire season. Between the #1 running back and the #10 running back was 200 points.
And that's what relative position value is. And that's the whole idea. That's the concept. And it's understanding how to get the most you can out of that running back position and every position and where the value is and where to find it.
Well, the first 3 picks are clearly the most important in a draft. And last year, Todd Gurley did me dirty. I'm just going to say right now, Todd Gurley did not help me out at all. Is there any reason to believe that Todd Gurley can get back in my good graces?
I think there is.
You can convince me of this?
I'm going to try. Here's my 30-second pitch. You ready? Here we go. I think that Todd Gurley can get back into your good graces, and here's why. No Jeff Fisher. Right off the bat. There's a good start, right? You had Sammy Watkins in there, and that's another good start because now defenses have to really respect Sammy Watkins. No matter how good he plays, no matter how well Jared Goff plays, now they have to at least be respectable in terms of where that defense is lining up, how they're going to adjust to Watkins being there. And I think Gurley with McVay, the new head coach, I think they're going to open things a lot for him.
And he was known as a great play caller. McVay certainly was. But I'm just wondering whether it feels like Gurley left all of his talent in St. Louis. Did he bring anything to L.A.? What scares me when I look at Gurley right now, though, is Trent Richardson, 2012, rookie, fantastic season, and then he's not even in the league anymore. I'm just so afraid that Gurley is going to fall into that category.
Well, look, a year ago today, we were talking about Todd Gurley, and people were falling over themselves to draft him, right? Where you wanted him in a top 5 overall scenario. And now, here we are. People barely want to touch him in the 2nd round. That's value. That's opportunity. A lot has changed since then. You can't get rid of the talent off for 1 bad season.
Well, what we've seen out of these rookies is, or what we've seen out of the running backs is the rookies are actually stepping into these roles, but they can't be on the field if they can't pass protect. Right. That was the big issue last year. This year, it looks like all of these rookies are good pass protectors. What kind of an impact do you see out of this crop of rookie running backs this year?
Well, it's a much more complete, group of running backs in terms of their abilities and skill set. You have Fournette right now who's dealing with a foot injury, which is a little tricky. McCaffrey's going to be a PPR stud. Everyone's going to love McCaffrey, and I think rightfully so. I'd say 1,100 all-purpose yards when all is said and done for McCaffrey. And now you see Dalvin Cook, who's moving almost past Joe Mixon in a lot of drafts. And Cook is the guy that I think is really going to be the breakout because I think Minnesota needs him to be good. There's no competition there for him. I think from day one, he's the guy and the best value on the board of the 3.
Well, yeah, he has. He's moved up. He's passed McKinnon as the #1 running back there in Minnesota, and that's a team that, you know what, you look at their strength of schedule, that offense is going to be able to move the ball there. Dalvin Cook seems to be the guy that is a mid-2nd round kind of a pick and worth it.
He is, and he's getting closer to that, and I think also you have to take into account the difficulty Sam Bradford had last year. I mean, what kind of scenario is that to put a quarterback in where all of a sudden week 1 you're the guy now? All of a sudden week 1 you're learning a new playbook with a new team, with a new cast, and then your offensive coordinator is gone a couple weeks into the season, right?
Right.
He's had a full offseason, full OTAs, everything there with this cast, with Cook now. I think that's going to be a positive for him.
What you can't afford is a bust in the first 3 rounds. And Ezekiel Elliott is going to be a top 3, first 3 rounds pick. Where do you value Ezekiel Elliott? If the draft were today, and right now he's facing a 6-game suspension, how do you value, which really is an 8-game suspension. He's not back until week 8.
Right.
How do you value him?
Well, right now I'm not taking him, and that would be my advice to everybody out there is to not take him because you're basically setting yourself up for failure. We were joking before we came on, right? I said winter is coming with the NFL season, and that's what happens. You've got injuries coming. You've got things are going to happen to your team. Bad things are going to happen. Why start off in the hall with a guy who is already going to be missing a couple weeks? That's just an awful idea. But if you want to, if you have to, I'd say beginning of the 3rd round, late 2nd round, that's where you can take that risk and hopefully get a big second half out of him.
There is a benefit to this. You're right. The big second half. He's going to have fresh legs in the second half of the season, and you want your best players to be at their best when you're playing in your playoffs,
Correct.
which are going to be week 14, 15, 16. And Elliott would be a guy that could do that.
You would, but you have to get to the playoffs first, right? That's what you got to do. Everyone,
okay, so you got to backload your team.
Is great, right? But our mind is funny like that. It tricks us into a bias and saying, I can make it work if everything breaks right. Well, what if everything breaks wrong? Then where are you? Or what if just a few things break wrong? That's way too much risk, and you don't need to assume it because in the early rounds, there's plenty of guys like McCoy, Gurley, who we talked about, Horton, Freeman, Howard Freeman. All those guys are, all of them are going to be useful, good, solid running backs, and you don't have to take that risk quite so early on him.
Okay, great advice so far, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you about the quarterback situation and what these injuries are doing to the real value of not only the quarterbacks, but the players around them.